Welcome to the Plant-Centered and Thriving podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Kitchens. Welcome back to the show. I'm so excited that you're here. And of course, as always, I'm really excited to talk to our guest. Her name is Greta, and she was a former client of mine. And I really wanted her to come on the show and just share her story. She comes from more of a animal welfare approach when it comes to being plant-based. And I wanted you to hear her story because I feel like pieces that will resonate with you, especially because when she was vegetarian, she was also diagnosed with high cholesterol, and that kind of like set off some alarms. And so she's like, well, I don't really want to go down the path of being on medication and all that. So she also kind of had to rework the way that she was eating as a vegetarian and plant-based. So we're going to dive into that as well. Welcome to the show, Greta.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you're here. But before we dive into everything, I would love for you to tell everyone kind of what you do, where you're at, and how things are going.
Sure. So I had been living in Ohio when I was working with Ashley, and I've been there for about 10 years. And I just moved to the Atlanta area for a job working as a nurse practitioner in psych at an outpatient clinic. So I'm just kind of getting my feet wet here and preparing for the humid summer everyone is warning me about. My plant based vegan journey started before I met Ashley. I was vegetarian for the longest time just because I kept saying to myself, and I think I'm just more of a sensitive person. Most people don't think about, I just kept wondering, like, how did this meat get to my plate? And what was the process? Like, it probably had a terrible life, and it probably didn't want to die, and it probably was treated cruelly and inhumanely. And I just started to feel really, really bad. And I just kind of just didn't want to be a part of being a meat eater and all that. So I think that prompted the vegetarian. And then after I was vegetarian for a few years, I'm like religious about going to get my annual checkups. It just, it's comforting me. Okay, like every year I'm checked out, like everything's going fine. And then like here she said that I had high cholesterol and that I needed to lose weight and exercise more. And I'm like, well, those things are true. I was on the higher end of normal in the BMI, which some people don't love BMI, but
Yeah, I know Greta's putting air quotes around BMI, which I love.
it is what it is. But I was like, okay, I'm not officially overweight. Like, why is my cholesterol high? Like, this just didn't make sense to me. And so I kind of just started researching more and more about the vegan diet. And because I was like, dang, I'm already healthy, like I'm already vegetarian. So I was like, why is this not enough? And then I was realizing, okay, maybe it's because I eat too many eggs or dairy. And I started researching all the cholesterol, and like I was completely blown away when I found out that like a single egg has percent of your daily value of cholesterol, or recommended daily value. And I was like, whoa, so if I eat 2 eggs a day a few times a week, like that's probably be an issue. Not to mention, the cheese and all the other, dairy products. So I was like, okay, well, maybe that's the culprit. And for the longest time, it just felt like too hard. I admire vegans, but like I can never do that. Every time I would think about it, I just would feel overwhelmed and I just couldn't do it. But anyway, I met this vegan friend at work, and we were just chatting, and she mentioned that she was vegan and started chatting more, became friends, and she basically invited me to this little, they were having a thing of Dominion. I don't know if you've heard of that documentary or not.
I don't think so.
It's really, really good, but it was at Micro Cinema. And I'm telling you, that thing kicked my butt. Like I literally went vegan the next day. I was like, I can't believe just how dramatic the factory farming industry is. Like it just completely blew me away. And it was just informative. It wasn't even saying like, hey, everybody go vegan. Like it was not saying that at all. I mean, it was basically just showing normal everyday practices of every industry, like every single type of animal that we, consume. It was showing the behind the scenes, and it was just very informative. And like I was sitting with my husband at the time, and he's like, can I leave? And I'm like, no, you can't leave. He was like, I feel really sick right now. Like he was a meat eater, and I was like, babe, you're not leaving me. Like if you're gonna eat meat, you can at least watch you can at least watch the process. And I don't know, I just felt very moved. Like, I was like, I don't care how hard it is. Like, I don't want to be a part of it, and I'm going to do it, which, for most people is crazy. But I had a good friend who was like, I'll help you. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to be texting you like every day. So that's kind of what started me into the vegan lifestyle. But there is another few components to that. Obviously, like the fact that I had high cholesterol was something that I wanted to not just take a medication for. And my brother has high cholesterol, my dad, they're both on blood pressure meds. And I was like, I don't want to be on something that I don't need to be on, especially if I can cure it through diet. Like, I just was like, this is literally just a band-aid. If I can exercise it off or change my diet it off, like, I really should just go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
So it for me, it just felt like the responsible choice, considering my body, aside from all the animal issues. That's the story of how I landed into the vegans.
Yeah. Well, kind of going back to what you were saying at the beginning, and it sounds like the documentary just like reaffirmed the direction that you were headed is like, you actually took the time to think about what was on your plate, which I think a lot of us don't do. I know I didn't do that for most of my life. I didn't think about how the food got there, how the meat got there. And so that's sort of what catapulted you into going vegetarian. And then you watch this documentary, which kind of opens up your eyes to even more about how the animal industry works, which again, a lot of us don't think about, or a lot of us have never even seen or taken the time to understand. But
Right.
it's hard, even if it's not, like you said, a gory documentary, it's just kind of showing the process. It's still hard to be like, wow, like this is how my food gets here. And
Yes.
this animal that probably doesn't want to die, is like, anyways, there's just so much to go into it and we won't
Mhm.
dive deep too much into it. But I think it's just amazing how like taking that time to think about how our food got here, whether it is an animal product or even a fruit or vegetable, it can be helpful to make that connection and get a deeper
For
understanding.
sure.
So then you go from there, your doctor's telling you, hey, your cholesterol is high, you probably should lose a little bit of weight, exercise. And so with your family history and even with your background in nursing, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it sounds like you were like, I want to try a different route if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thrown for a loop. I mean, when she said I had high cholesterol, I was like, why? Like, I eat plants all the time. Like, I was like, I'm so healthy. Like, why? Like, something just not adding up here. Like, you're tricking me. It just was really a big shock, to be honest with you. And then I was just mad. I was mad. I'm like, why do I have to lose weight and exercise when I'm at an okay weight? Like, I'm not. I'm happy with my weight.
Mm,
So then it just launched me into really thinking about, like, what can I do to change, which, obviously I have talked about the medication. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to just, a lifestyle change.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, and oftentimes, like the medication is sort of like the quick fix or the band aid that's presented to us, or maybe it's even all that we know when we go to the doctor. I think one thing that resonates probably with a lot of listeners is that you actually took the time to be like, okay, well, what do I actually want to do? Not maybe what am I supposed to do? Or what is the doctor telling me to do?
right,
But
right.
what can I do to potentially lower my cholesterol?
Well, and I should mention that it was in the back of my mind. I had went to a presentation at college from this lady who basically shared her plant-based journey. It was like a lunch and learn type of thing, and she had shared her story. She was very overweight and she wanted to lose weight, and she decided to do it the plant-based way. But she also wanted to get off a lot of medications that her doctor was putting her on, which was like, she was on I think a torvastatin, which is, it's all related to blood pressure and cholesterol and all that jazz. That she was going to be put on a normal cocktail of meds for that. And she was like, I don't want to do that. And basically, she literally lost a ton of weight, and she got rid of her diabetes and all that. And she showed the images of her veins like on the screen. Like, you could see the plaque reducing like over time. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I remember being fascinated by that
Yes.
when she had that up there, because I was like, number one, I can't believe you took the time to do that. But number two, I'm so blown away. And that's so amazing. Like, I mean, it was just really cool to see, like, hey, this isn't rocket science. Like, she's just changing her diet, and it has made a tremendous change in her life. Like she's a whole new person now, essentially on the inside, you know?
Yeah.
That was also in the back of my mind as far as like, hey, I can change this, aside from just like lose weight and exercise, like I can make a change. Like that is an option. I mean, my doctor didn't talk to me about, going, plant-based or whatever, but it was in the back of my mind already. So
Yeah. Well, so how was that transition going from vegetarian to like almost overnight going plant-based? And two, we're going to bring your husband to this because I'm curious how that also went.
yeah, I think he was annoyed. He didn't go vegan a year after I did. So I was on my own for like a while. And I just remember thinking there are a lot of alternatives that I just never really thought about. Like, for example, yogurt. Like, they make vegan yogurt. It's not a big deal. Also, did you know you can buy your own yogurt maker, which I recently have bought my own.
Oh,
And I haven't done it yet, but I hypothetically think it's pretty easy. You just order some of
like the cultures.
the cultures. Yeah, you order the cultures and you pick your milk and you put it in the machine and it does its thing. And so I'm really curious. It might taste really gross, but I'm like, so in that kind of thing, it's become like an adventure a little bit, trying to figure out what do I want to find an alternative for. And 9 times out of 10, it's not even that bad. Like, for example, our go-to is applesauce when we're making cookies in place of eggs. And number one, that's healthier. Number two, we always have applesauce for the kids.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really not a big deal. And sometimes you run into issues, with the binding properties. So like, for example, we made a key pie and it was like key lime soup.
Shoot.
But I mean, at the end of the day, it just gives you a laugh, and
Yeah.
and you have fun with it. You eventually get to the point where it's not a chore, but you just kind of have fun looking for like workarounds. I mean, there's definitely frustrating moments, and there's where, like, for example, people at my new job were already talking about how they're excited about a pizza party because we like did the most trainings, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're definitely probably not going to be getting like a pizza just for me.
Yeah.
So I'll
Right.
feel like having my own thing that day. But like, it's like anything. You just get used to what you believe in and what you want to do, and it's definitely hard. And even this is just recent. I mean, I've been vegan since 2017, if I remember right. And there was this burger that I really wanted. And it was like I'm originally from northern Minnesota, and they do these wild rice burgers. And they're amazing. Like, I just love them. And I realized I hadn't been to a restaurant in a few years to go get one. And I called the restaurant to double check because I am a little OCD. They said, yeah, they have egg whites in them for a binder. And I'm like, okay, like, but I felt so mad in that moment. I was like, why? My husband was like, just have it, it's your favorite thing. And I'm like, no, I don't want it anymore. Now it's ruined, it's tainted. Like, I was like,
Hmm.
no. It's moments like that where it's okay to be frustrated. And I felt better after I had a little cry and I was just like screaming in the car. But then I figured out that they had a falafel burger. I was like, combing through the menu, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize they had a falafel burger. And I was like, that's amazing too. So I had an amazing falafel burger that didn't have egg whites.
Good.
So yeah, I mean, it's just, it's kind of just being ready for the tough moments. But at the end of the day, I feel really good about where I'm at. I feel like I'm living my best life, what I believe, and you can't put a price on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
When you're living a life that's like aligning with you, what's important to
yeah,
you. Yeah.
yeah.
I like
Mhm.
what you said earlier, Greta, about it. You almost kind of have to look at it as an adventure. Like everything is not going to be perfect. You're going to make this key lime soup at some
Yeah,
point, or an
yeah,
example, something similar. It's like you just kind of have to just kind of go along with it and not be too hard on yourself. Have
yeah.
those laughs and kind of make fun of like, oh my gosh, I can't
Oh,
believe I
make
just
me
made
laugh.
this. Yeah. And then also have those cries, which I think is also just as important because
Yeah.
in a way you're sort of grieving some of these things that you really enjoyed that don't align with you anymore. And I
Mhm.
think, like you said, if you would have really wanted that burger, you would have had it. But because there were egg whites in it and you knew it, you were like, no, like I actually don't want that. As delicious as I know it is, like I'm
Mhm.
gonna make that decision and own it that I'm actually not gonna have it.
For me, it's not about like, okay, is it that big of a deal to have one burger with egg whites in it? No, like from a nutrition standpoint, no, you're not gonna like, mess up your whole thing. But for me, that's where like the ethical part comes in of like, I know that those, chickens probably didn't see the light of day. It's about that other piece of it.
Yep.
Which to me, I have to go back to that. I'm like, no, like that's not something I want to be a part of. Even though sometimes I just don't want to care. But I'm like, no, at the end of the day, I do want to care. Like
Yeah.
that's who I
Yeah.
am,
Yeah.
and I can't, take it or leave it. That's who I am. So
Yeah. 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 That why for you runs really deep. It's obvious.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's been a journey too. I mean, I've seen probably every documentary out there, but probably those have been the most eye-opening in terms of just realizing how, you know, the whole world is based around animals and dairy, and there's a whole nother world of plants, but our world just isn't really based around that. But there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with like world. It's just our world is centered on something different, like what everybody's used to. So it's okay that we're on the outside. It's recognizing like most people are in this bubble, I'm in this bubble, and that's totally fine. Like, it's just kind of coming to a slow acceptance of that. And these documentaries that I've seen have helped me realize that. Probably the best one is What the Health. That's probably just such a good learning video.
Yeah.
And then like I said, Dominion was real eye opening too.
Yeah.
So yeah, educating yourself can really help with getting your why deeper and kind of sticking to it as well.
Yeah, that education piece that you're speaking about is really important with this journey. And if you're listening and you're kind of new to this, like it is really helpful to just educate yourself, to watch some of these documentaries, to read some of these inspirational stories, because there are lots out there when it comes to plant-based eating. Once you start like reading, it just kind of leads you to another one and another one. So yeah, educating yourself is really helpful because like you said, it sort of helps round out that why and yeah, makes it more of a firm foundation for you to stand on.
For sure.
Yeah. So with you transitioning, you said like your hubby transitioned about a year later. How was that? Any kind of struggles or anything that came up while you were and he wasn't?
I mean, I would get annoyed because we'd end up like cooking different things sometimes, but we slowly realized that it's just easier to make one meal for both of us, obviously, but he didn't want to give up the cheese. And I will say for a long time the cheese options weren't that great, but I really feel like there's a ton of options. I feel like in 2021 it is so easy to find an alternative cheese option at the grocery store.
Yes.
You can totally find it. It's really about finding which one you like best. It's not even like, oh, there's one option. It's like there's plenty. And now where we live here in Georgia, like there's this place called Peace, Love, and Pizza or something, and they have a vegan cheese pizza. So it's becoming more trendy, just even going out for stuff that's like loaded with cheese. So I mean, that definitely helps. I don't know. It definitely had its struggles, and I think part of it is just kind of a culture shock. Like, oh my gosh, you're really doing this? Like, you're really gonna have whatever? But I will say, being a vegetarian first is definitely a really good transition. In terms of like, okay, if you're used to that, now you're just taking out the eggs. So then it's like figuring out, okay, like, can I get good at making tofu eggs? Like, and then you realize like, oh, black Himalayan salt is actually the secret ingredient to making it. Like it's really not that bad. Just egg. I can't recommend that enough. And they have like a flat egg too. So yeah, it's like looking for those alternatives. I mean, the milk thing is a no-brainer. I mean, there's like 8,000 different types of alternative milks. It's really just about finding which one you like. Which I mean, I will say it's fun to experiment, like I've really learned that cereal is the best with almond coconut milk. If you're a coffee drinker, I'm sure, it's very trendy to like oat milk. And, and newsflash, it's also really good for the environment, like in terms
Yeah.
of it's just way easy, and that's a whole nother component that I, haven't even mentioned, but it's definitely important to me, making sure that, I'm doing what I can as far as being environmentally friendly and trying to have that a part of my lifestyle as well. I mean, eating vegan is like one of the best things you can do for the environment. So,
Yeah. Yep.
you know,
Amen to that.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said too about becoming vegetarian was easier for you because it really can be helpful to transition in stages.
Oh
To
yeah.
kind of think of it like that, like sort of one step at a time versus feeling like you have to go from, eating a westernized diet to all of a sudden you're plant-based overnight. So transitioning in
Yeah.
stages can be really helpful.
Hmm.
And like you said as well, Greta, like it really does open your eyes if you give yourself that time to go to the grocery store to just kind of see what else is out there. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
said, you can find an alternative for almost anything these days.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
and you're right, like the cheeses. I mean, a lot of grocery stores are even adopting their own vegan cheese, brands.
Mm.
Like Harris Teeter, I just saw had done it. So there are a
Oh
lot
really?
of yes, yes,
Oh,
yeah.
that's cool. That's
Mm-hmm.
cool. I know Kroger's got a whole brand too. We actually like Kroger cheese the best.
Oh, see, perfect. Yes.
Hmm.
Yep. So it's definitely way more accessible now than it was, like you said, in 2017 when you switched. Yeah, there's a
Hmm.
lot more options. Yeah.
Yeah. The advice I would give to people is to not
Mm,
be afraid to to just try it. You don't have to go all or nothing. I mean, you can literally just try making your favorite meals with, an alternative milk versus dairy milk. And then you realize like, oh, it doesn't taste different. Like there's all these little things that you can make like a small change here or there with stuff that you do traditionally, and then it's not as scary, it's not as big, and it's also just not a competition. So it's really asking yourself, am I okay with where I'm at, and do I want to challenge myself, or do I want to take it easy and give myself some grace right now? Like, I mean, I think sometimes that's the hardest part, is just feeling good with where you're at. And it can be really easy to feel like, oh, like I'm not, this is too hard, or I'm not doing it, or I slipped here or there, or whatever the case is, but it's not the end of the world. It's about, you feeling good about what you're eating, and all the other things that go with that too, so.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Extending yourself that grace and compassion, it can be really, really helpful throughout this journey as well. Well, thank you so much, Greta, for being here and just sharing your story with everyone. So I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you want anyone to connect with you, if they have any questions or want to reach out, where would the best place be for that?
I guess just Instagram, unforgettable is my name.
All right. We'll put that in the
So,
show notes.
all
Perfect.
right, good.
All right, Greta, we'll talk to you later. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Until next time, keep thriving.